On August 9th, Radcliffe had finished drawing up the border. But Mountbatten decided to keep the new boundary a secret until after independence, so the British wouldn't be blamed for any ensuing violence. The delay prolonged the uncertainty, and some believe it increased the loss of life.
Signed, Cyril Radcliffe.
I never forgave him. Why he kept the decision to be announced about Lahore so late? I feel much killing could have been saved if they had announced the fate of Lahore 15 days before.
On the eve of independence, Radcliffe wrote to his stepson in London.
Nobody in India will love me for my award about the Punjab and Bengal, and there will be roughly 80 million people with a grievance who will begin looking for me. I do not want them to find me. I've worked and travelled and sweated. Oh, how I have sweated the whole time.
Radcliffe left India 4 days later, never to return.
He was deeply conscious that his rulings or his recommendations would generate controversy, conflict, and the possibility of a loss of a lot of human life. I do remember him saying that any solution, any drawing of the line would have done that.
On August 14th, 1947, a new country was born on the subcontinent. Jinnah's dream of a Muslim homeland became a reality in Pakistan.
Through Karachi's streets drives the Quaid-e-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Pakistan's first Governor-General. It's Karachi's first day of independence, and the crowds are out to greet him and Earl Mountbatten.
Mountbatten was in Karachi to declare independence for the newly created state. Bizarrely, no one except he and Radcliffe knew where its borders were, but this didn't stop the celebrations.
It never occurred to us that the Muslims of India will ever see the emergence of a sovereign, independent country, which they could call their own, you see. A country they could live for, a country they could die for, you see. It never occurred to us,
The next day, it was the turn of India to celebrate. Hundreds of thousands thronged the streets as Nehru, Mountbatten, his wife Edwina, and their daughter Pamela made their way to the Constituent Assembly.
Unfortunately, when my parents arrive, they can't get in because the crowd is so thick, but so thick, that they can't open the doors. So there's no way for them to get in. So somebody has to crawl in some window and go to the Prime Minister and say, it's like to the Viceroy, I can't get in because the crowd is so vast. Will you come and sort it out? So Nehru had to sort of scuttle around back and start hitting people and shouting at people and clearing away, which he was always brilliant at and loved doing. And eventually my parents were allowed to make their state entrance considerably less dignified than had been expected.
Well, you must remember that whatever the tragedy of partition, there are other aspects to it. I mean, it was an exhilarating occasion. There were millions of people out on the street celebrating. For my uncle and for his colleagues, it was the realization, though not in whole but in part, of their lifelong dream, the cause to which they had given their entire lives. And here it was. Indian independence.
But not everyone was celebrating. Gandhi, who for decades had struggled for a united independent India, lay fasting in Calcutta. His disciple Ashoka Gupta was with him.
He was a disappointed man. He was a man in distress. And he found that whoever people went with him to start with, now are deserting him. The desertion by other leaders, I think, hurt him very much. He wanted to die. His attitude was, let me die.
With the celebrations over, Mountbatten finally announced the new border. It sliced through the previously united provinces of Bengal and Punjab. Lahore was given to Pakistan, a disaster for the city's few remaining Hindus.
We were dejected and we were so sorry because, see, those Hindus, by that time, Hindus had realized that it would not be possible for them to stay in Pakistan.
Millions of people were now on the move. Muslims who found themselves on the Indian side of the border, and Hindus and Sikhs who were on the Pakistani side. They packed their belongings onto bullock carts and left the villages they had lived in for generations.
डरते हैं जी हाँ डरते हैं बहुत तो डरते हैं सब भी अजीब आजन कोई चीज नहीं चुकन दी वाला भाई आके कुछ नहीं जाना तुम अपनी जाना ले जाओ गड्डियां ते बहन दी करो गड्डियां ते दो दो बोरियां आटा सुट लिया जिन्ना घर हैगा सके ते एक गड्ढा सी 6 घरां दा कोई पता नहीं सी इन्हां नहीं पता भी आया भी अपने पिंड ही जावांगे इत्थे लगणी आउणा सी पिछे
The refugees formed human caravans called kafilas. The lucky ones had military escorts to protect them from armed bands waiting on the roads.
The first major refugee movement, the biggest concentration, was about a 50 miles long column of over 200,000 people was moved, and I was escorting it from Jalandhar onwards up to the Pakistan border.
Wajahat Hussain was a young army officer. He had been sent to the Punjab to deal with disturbances on the border.
We had very few troops with us, very few troops with us. So here were these people. There were no transport arrangements. There were no arrangements for the medical cover. There was nothing except that we had collected these people in open spaces. They were told to move, and they were moving on foot. Some had bullock carts, and they put their belongings on the bullock carts, and their old people and children. Others were on the foot. And we used to do about, initially we used to do about 15 to 20 miles in a day. But as they got tired, as the days passed by, they became less and less.
Military ਜਾਂਦੀ ਰਹੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਾਲ ਦੋ ਤਿੰਨ ਮੌਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਰੋਟੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਐਡਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਬਿਮਾਰੀ ਪੈ ਗਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦੀ ਬੜੀ ਮੁਸੀਬਤ ਸੀ ਬਿਠੇ ਫਿਰ ਕਾਬਲਾ ਖਲਾ ਨੇਰ ਪੈ ਨੇਰੀ ਪਾ ਜਾ ਜੀ ਰੋਟੀਆਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਪੈ ਜਾਣਾ ਉੱਥੇ ਕਾਬਲਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਤੇ ਕੋਈ ਜੇ ਪੱਕੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਪੱਕੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੱਕੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੱਕੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਾਣੀ ਗੰਦੇ ਪੀਤੇ ਪਤਾ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਝੋਨੇ ਲੱਗੇ ਝੋਨਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਐ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਪਾਣੀ ਪੀਣਾ
Throughout August and September, the columns of refugees grew and grew, from hundreds of thousands to millions.